What's going on, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the LivBtr Podcast. I'm your host, Jay Ciano, CEO of Sabre Advisors. On today's episode, we have my new friend, Emma Barry, the founder of Trouble Global, a powerhouse in business innovation and personal transformation. She is also known as the Oprah of Fitness and a very sought-after speaker, advisor, and investor who ignites boldness and brilliance in leaders and organizations. With her edgy energy and sharp business acumen, she inspires others to redefine limits and embrace explosive success. We are all over the place in this episode, and I know you're going to enjoy it.
I just want to have peace. Pay for the bill, let them take my card, never see the receipt. Good health, we prize, but everybody around prosperity.
What's up, guys, and welcome to the LivBtr Podcast. This is your host, Jay Ciano, and this is the show for people trying to optimize every area of their life. Let's go.
I just want to have peace.
So today I have a very exciting guest, Emma Barry. Welcome to the LivBtr Podcast.
Thank you very much, and welcome to Times Square. I've just survived like 5 days there. Give me a medal, right?
Seriously, nobody should be spending 5 days in Times Square, by the way.
I opened up because I got to moderate the first panel at an event that's happening up there, Beyond Active, and the opening panel I said, and I'm so sorry for the New Yorkers who've never been here, because this is the place you avoid like the plague,
That's
right?
hysterical. It's
Yeah.
so true.
Yeah.
It's like it's one of those energies that you're full of energy.
Yeah.
And by the way, it's funny. The more that I look into you and what you do, I'm like, there's a lot of similarities here. There's a lot of I love your whole how you embrace trouble, right? Your brand is really cool, and you walk in here in all black, and obviously we
get on
very much so. So. For people who don't know you that are listening to the podcast, just give a little description on who you are and what you do.
Great. So I'm a global citizen of the world. So I was born in London, brought up in New Zealand, and then we now live in Los Angeles. So we've been there for about 11 years. So my whole life really has been in group fitness.
Yeah.
I was very fortunate to be one of the first 5 international master trainers for Les Mills, big group fitness company. So I went around the world pretty much for a decade right at the beginning of my career. So that opened up the world to me, and that's why I am who I am. It's why my number one value is travel and adventure and all of those things. So group fitness. We won green cards, believe it or not, to come back to the US. So we did that 10 years ago, moved to LA or South Bay, just South LA, and then went to Equinox for a few years. So worked with that great brand and learned about brand, right?
Yeah.
And ran the programming team there for a while, which was fantastic in group fitness. And then was getting asked to speak around the world, and with this bug to always be really truly global, I've been consulting for the last 10 years, mainly across America and mainly Europe at this point. Yeah. And here we are here. So I evangelize events and I work with brands that want to break shit, move fast, innovate, let's go.
Brands and unique individuals as well,
Correct,
right?
yeah.
Which is similar too, because I don't really speak about that as much, but because I consider humans really hard-driving, high-performing humans as brands and businesses,
Absolutely.
right? So there's so many synergies there, but I think it's really interesting that you do that as well. So we were talking before we hit record, we started to talk about the global fitness space, and I'd love to learn from you, just the differences today in the U.S., how it relates to the rest of the world, where the trends are coming from, because you mentioned something about contrast and EMS, and I said that contrast, I feel like the U.S. is kind of borrowing other people's lifestyles and making it on trend. Fair statement on with contrast, but macro, what's going on in the world?
Macro. So I'd say the world's getting smaller.
Yeah.
So everyone's very well traveled. We know it now. You can go to Dubai and you can basically serve an expat community and make a business out of it. So we know people are traveling. They go to New York, they go to London, they go to Singapore, Shanghai, wherever. So I think the world's getting smaller. I think trends are typically believed to come from LA and New York and then spin out. And most people think the rest of the world is about 6 years behind. I don't think that's true for all trends, but that's the feeling. That's what people will tell you here and away.
Right.
And then I think because of the advent of technology and things like that, I think some of the trends won't necessarily go through some of the same life cycles that they perhaps did. We were just talking about the boutique sector. I personally believe the golden era, and I'm not trying to kill boutiques, it has a very strong part to play in as a segment in in fitness generally. But, back in the early, say 10, 15 years ago, like you had SoulCycle, Fitting Room, Flywheel, like these brands, two of those aren't there in that form now anymore. And, there was SoulCycle instructors earning a lot of money, with all in, there was some, north of $1 million. That's not happening now. It's become more of a job. Prices come in. So I think the evolution of fitness, organised fitness, group fitness, personal training, small group training is really only about 50 years old. Like, yes, there's longer leads, but really as an organised, we've got clubs, we've got small clubs, studios, and that's sort of been rolling out. In many ways, I don't think we've evolved that much, which is a sort of a weird thing to say. I can still go into a class and there's an instructor teaching two people. I look at what happened in the digital space and it's all fairly similar. I mean, yes, there's more lights and, we're bringing in wearables, and so it's getting more technologically driven. I think there's over half US families now have some sort of wearable in the household. So it's a thing. Yeah. We're beginning to learn what's happening on the inside. We know that we lost our shit over the pandemic, right? Yeah. So we lost this. We didn't know what's going on in our body. We're getting fatter and more unfit despite more resources.
Sure.
We're screwing the planet in a number of ways. Bad atmosphere, bad food, whatever's happening in the economy right now. So I think the big trends, and like I mentioned, there are some things that strongly come from Europe. I mentioned FIBO, the biggest fitness show in the world. There's over 120,000 people. Bodybuilding's still a thing. EMS, so using electrical muscle stimulation is a really big thing. They've been saunaing and sparring and aromatherapying and all of those sorts of things forever.
Right.
That's been a part of the culture. The Europeans go on holiday. When they say, don't email me, I won't get back till August, they won't get back till August. In the US, foreign concept.
Of course, a whole different lifestyle.
Yeah, so I think depending on the trends, it's considered to come mainly from the US, from the coasts. But Southeast Asia's having a big boom in the boutiques right now. Scaling and franchising is on fire, and we're talking global.
Yeah.
We just watched Pure Gym, and HVLP is coming over strongly. They've got a bid in on Blink, which has just filed Chapter 11. So lots of movement. So you've got the HVLPs and the luxury seem to really be booming. A bit more challenging in the middle market because am I price or am I experience and emotion?
Right.
It's hard to define that. And you've got, big things like Planet Fitness and Orange Theory. So there's a lot more accessibility. The pandemic really drove awareness. So the pie definitely got bigger in that time. Like a lot of people, and the GLP-1s are really opening up a whole market. So all we've really done in the last 50 years is motivate the motivated, get the fit fitter. I'm being broad stroke, but you get the jig. And now, where's the 80%? The people who truly need us couldn't think of anything worse than sitting on a bike, going for a walk, lifting a kettlebell. That's beginning to appeal. The other thing is if you have to use medically driven, protocols like GLP-1s or whatever it is, as I start to lose the weight, I start to feel in my body more, and maybe I now have the confidence to maybe walk in the door, and we're seeing that. Also, all of these strategies are not going to work unless you have a sustainable lifestyle. If you're not eating protein, if you're not lifting weights, you'll be a big bag of saggy skin for a hot minute, and you will rebound back. It's just a more scientifically driven way of the old yo-yo diet is the way we're seeing it. Sure. The fitness industry is hand-holding with big pharma and things like that. We kind of have to. Yeah. I think the ship has left and, we've kind of got to get on that. So a lot of brands like Lifetime are jumping on that. If you're doing this, fine, let us come in and support you. Welcome to our community. Right. And so that's a whole journey. That's different than you and I feeling probably okay walking into most places. Sure. Most people couldn't think of anything worse. You freaks, you fitness freaks.
Totally, yeah. I mean, I've been 100 pounds heavier than I am now.
Right.
And
you know the journey.
For sure. And I think it's just super interesting that there's so, like you said, so many resources out there. You could really be fit,
But it's confusing. There's a lot.
It's almost a very simple concept that is intentionally like overcomplicated, right? Yeah. Because if you just do the basics, right? You focus on sleep, you hydrate, you move your body, you lift some weights, you do right. Like you don't eat terribly unhealthy. Like you could be in pretty good shape by doing basic things. You don't have to be extreme.
Yeah, I agree with that. And then I also think with technology, and I know everyone's like, oh, the machines are coming. Yes, they are, but use them to your advantage. They're another tool.
Right.
So the other thing I would add into this is the big conversation right now is, obviously AI. So technology is coming in. Service, everything about that's going to get better.
Yeah.
It's going to take a while to settle, and some of it's not. And some AI is not AI. It's just bad bots, and that's been called it as well. So but that give us 3 or 5 years, that's going to get really good. Like some of the technology I just saw at this show now, and I go to CES in Vegas just to get my mind blown by industries that have a lot more money than we do to see what they're doing with it.
That are far ahead.
Absolutely. But the other interesting thing is, and I really do believe this, is women's health's now squarely on the table.
Of course.
All the menopauses, we've never had any research done before 1985.
I'm getting, if I open up Instagram, I'm getting menopause bombed. I'm not a woman, and it's like so front and center. It's like the most common topic, and I advise a lot of women, so we talk about that, and they're very high profile, and they're very vocal about menopause.
Right. And it's all of a sudden you got Drew Barrymore, you got everyone jumping on it, and I think it's a good thing because it's been the big mystery.
Yeah.
I think once Big Pharma works out how much money there is to make from us, I think they'll jump even more into that as well. But it's sort of interesting. So I would just add to your sleep, and sleep's such a cornerstone, right? Like, if I don't get a good sleep, I make bad decisions all day long.
Likewise.
What I eat, I get lost on the doom. It's and I have to wake up and go, okay, what was my sleep score? I mean, I was in a conference, so it was literally below 50. I was like, I'm not ready for anything, and my sleep score's in the toilet.
It's the worst.
But anyway, what I'm saying with that is what we can't see is our hormonal profile. So I think getting some sort of panels or reads or using technology that can actually tell me you're a protein-based person who really responds well to strength stuff. Even the latest Human podcast, I was just listening to Dr. Stacey Sims, and most of that stuff is like women are not eating enough protein because we've always been taught to eat salads until you get down to the size you want to be. Creatine, which again you put with the big body. I don't want to get big, all of those things. But what happens is our hormonal profile, we go into a cascade. So we're competing against guys where intermittent fasting might work, going for a morning walk might work. And we're going, why is my husband, it's all just falling off him and I'm actually putting on weight doing the things. Right. So you've got to know what's going on in your body. And I think...
Well, it's customized, right? Like everybody's body's different.
And it's changing. Yeah. Like the protocols I was using 5 years ago are not working today. Right. And I had to sit down, and it wasn't until I listened to that I thought, oh my God, I'm just banging my head against the wall trying to do the same shit.
Do you
if
take
it's not
creatine?
Working, I've just started. So I've changed a new regime. I was on intermittent fasting and it worked for a while. Yeah. And then I'm like, oh, shit, this actually isn't working anymore. Yeah. I prefer not to eat in the morning because I feel clearer.
Me too.
But maybe I'm just got my protein, carbohydrate, fat mix out. Right. So I'm exploring that right now. Yeah. And something
intermittent fasting is really just time restricted feeding.
It is. It's just eating over a smaller window.
I mean, so it works really well, I think, for people that are just like myself. I can't measure my food.
Right.
Like I've never gotten to that extreme where it's like I'm too busy. I can't run around and not eat because I can't measure my food or prepare my food and take it with me every day. It's just doesn't work for my lifestyle. But intermittent fasting taught me how to eat less in a day, essentially. Yep. And, obviously protein's a different thing, but I'm very heavy protein for sure.
Good. Makes sense.
Yeah. So you said a lot, so I have a lot of questions. First and foremost, why is EMS not popular in the U.S.? What's your take on EMS?
I think the barrier to EMS, because I tell you, I did a 20-minute workout a couple of conventions ago. I couldn't walk the next day.
Yeah, me too.
So that's one of the things, it engages the whole muscle. So I think the kit might be a bit of a barrier.
Sure.
It's always going to be...
The kit's getting smaller, though.
Yeah, it is. It's getting easier to get in. But, in the early days, it would take you longer to get into it than it would to do the workout. Once you've felt it, I think, look, this is a barrier for a lot of things in our industry. Oh, virtual fitness is never going to take off, I would give as the example in a club. I was part of Les Mills. We trialled this 15 years ago.
Yeah.
There is something amazing about having some of the best instructors in the world in a semi-dark room with maybe 2 others. That, to me, can be more of an ideal environment than maybe having a substandard live experience with someone who's just still following their notes. So that's an example of that. EMS, I think, well, first of all, is it celebrity-driven? Like, is Jennifer Aniston doing it?
Right.
Is Thor doing it? There's a little bit of that. This is America. It's Hollywood. Yep. Also, there is that barrier. And then I think it's one of those things, if you haven't done it, if you've only looked at it, it's like, oh my God, the machines are coming. What? there's a lot of things that don't get me in that kit really quickly. Whereas you and I going, holy shit, in 20 minutes I can get even more. Like, I remember my whole bicep was feeling it. And I've never had that. It's always like, in a spot. So I just don't think, maybe it's the messaging. Maybe it hasn't appealed to this audience here. Because
do you think it will? Like if you had a bet on it?
I'm divided because I'm just divided because now that we have a pill or an injection, as it turns out, there's a little bit of that.
Yeah, but that's not the pill and the injection actually reduces your muscle, not it doesn't strengthen your muscle. Right?
I know, but you think. How many people are on it right now? How many people do you know that perhaps are larger in frame who've just and you're like
totally
and they're like, whoa,
you're like, you look great. You know, are you doing anything new? No, I'm doing the same stuff that I've always done. It's just finally working. Okay, sounds good.
So I'm divided on that one. I would like to say that it would, and I think what we have to do is we've got to remove that barrier. So I think if the kit comes down, it's literally 10 seconds to get in. I think if people start saying, I mean, look at our aging population. We cannot support the health system now, let alone, in a couple of years. So I think that efficiency, I think that joy of movement, if we can get, so maybe the messaging, I think more marketing, I still think there probably hasn't been that much, you know what I mean? Like, I look at the menopause conversation, that has literally been 20 years in the coming. I know people that have been activists for that for so long. Right. So, what has tipped that? We've had to wait till we get huge podcasts. We've had to wait till you can either Rogan or Huberman or, one of these things. You've got to have celebrities behind it, sadly, because
well, it just draws more attention,
and the influencer culture has been skewing younger. So I'm not sure whether that's important to them at the moment. So you have to look at these things, and you're a branding guy. You can't make stuff go viral. Right. Sometimes the weirdest things, like what are the songs? Why the song? Why the move? Right. You're like, that's crazy. But it just
catches and it goes.
And the more corporate it is, the less. Piss off, I'm going to talk to my friends in some chat channel that you don't know about.
That's right.
To see what you really like.
Yeah, exactly. So
I'm just because I know them, the longer I stay in America, the less I understand Americans. There's also that. I think we get confused by the English language. It is so different here. The mentality, the values, just everything.
That's why I'm curious because, 96% of my brain is US, right? So it's like I'm only focused. It's funny because initially, when I started out, it was just New York, and then it now is the entire country, which gets really small fast. Right. The whole industry gets small fast, but you looking at the way the world is working would actually make it a little confusing to understand maybe how each country's moving if somebody's solely focused on that, right?
Right.
Yeah.
The
wearable technology thing is you have an Oura ring on.
I do have an Oura ring.
And how long have you been wearing it?
A few years now. Yeah. This is what changed my sleep around. Because it wasn't, and a little bit when I worked at Equinox, we were doing sleep studies way before they became cool with UCLA, and it wasn't until I work out, I'd probably done 2 decades of bad decision. My executive function was probably half-mast, right? Yeah. So that's what changed it for me, because being sharp and onto it and tracking trends and being on is important to me. Yes, your body and your sleep and body weight, all that stuff, but it was like, shit, I can't, the brain fog or just not being on, that's become more and more important to me. And so that's what turned me around. So now, like I said, sometimes I don't watch it when I'm at a conference because it's just, you get annihilated.
It's depressing.
It is depressing. But for me, and the other thing is I get into it, for the sleep stuff, like I'm like, if I don't go to bed at this time, I pay for it in REM sleep, right? Too, I'm pretty good at deep sleep. I can fall asleep on a train in Japan standing up. So sleep's good for me. It's just getting the volume right. Yeah, so I love that.
Circadian rhythm.
Yeah, I'm big on that. Like, get the sunlight. That's why we live in California. My husband and I, we're sun people. We're
morning sun. Like, are you intentional? You go outside and get that morning sun. And that's how you start.
You got to get that screen before you get the other screen. Yeah. Always doing blue blockers. Like just all of that stuff. I mean, it makes sense.
California is so far ahead of New York. Like these things are not even really scratching the surface.
Which
here.
is crazy to me because my husband's a naturopath, and like there are just we are so out of rhythm. It's ridiculous. We eat foods that are out of season. We are on screens to ridiculous hours. We're not sleeping the normal times. We don't know darkness. We don't know stillness and quiet. We try not to walk on the earth. We, trash our oceans. Like every main thing that builds health, we are doing a really spectacular job of screwing it up.
Yeah.
Like as a humanity.
Sure.
You know,
Yeah,
yes, there's lots of people fighting the fight, but look what happened during COVID. Look what happened to the pollution in China, for example. You could see the sky.
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
like it's
it's
crazy. So morning sun, which is difficult, and you have to look at that and go, why is the suicide rate so high in places like Sweden? And then you think there's a winter that's very grim and bleak, and you can go without. I don't know, that's a factor. There are other factors, of course, but you look at things like that and...
Well, I think it's interesting, too, because people are really... Like, I was having this conversation with Nicolene about, cold swimming, right? Like, they don't even talk about... Like, it's not... We're doing a cold bath. It's like... It's their lifestyle from a very young age. When the weather starts to turn, they go outside and they intentionally swim in cold water. And it's like she was saying that it gets them ready kind of for the season, right? Like it gets them, ready for the transition into the cold weather. And then she was like, but I love the cold. Like I really enjoy the cold weather, and I do too. Now, don't get me wrong. Do I want it all year round? No, but I can really easily tolerate a New York City winter with getting out, and traveling a little bit, which I'm fortunate to be able to do. But my lifestyle starts to change, where I'm intentionally embracing the cold. I'll go outside, first thing in the morning, jump into an ice bath, whether it's snowing out, sunny out, whatever it is, when it's cold. And I embrace it. And I feel like that's great for me. But for my wife, she can't stand the cold. Right. Like she's just wired differently, right? So, and I think everybody is,
You could probably track it back throughout the genealogy for
100%.
Sure.
And but I think it's really like that's the next frontier for us is realizing everybody's different. What works for you is not going to work for me. You have to figure it out on your own in some way. And I was listening to Dr. Andy Galpin this morning, and he was talking about how, listen, if Pilates is great for you, like you should do that, right? And you don't need to worry about what everybody's saying, essentially. But there are certain things, like he's like, sauna, yes, it's great for you, but you could raise your heart rate, other ways and things of that nature, right? You don't have to necessarily buy into like the whole sauna thing, which I think sauna has changed my life in a very positive way for many different reasons. So I think people should definitely use saunas. Yeah. But I wanted to ask you were referring to the Huberman podcast, and she was talking about how for women of a specific age, I believe, I forget, but she was saying...
she's mainly focusing on perimenopause and postmenopausal women, so definitely in the, the hormone cascade, the big hormone shifts.
Yeah, so she was talking about how, like, group fitness classes like Orange Theory and F45 are not necessarily good for that woman.
That's right, because they don't put you in the right... That? Yeah, again, it's an individual. I know some people that do these things and they're incredibly in shape, and it's obviously working for whatever their profile is. Right. And you can't always see the profile. Her main point around that was we're training sometimes in the wrong heart rate zones, and sometimes we're not doing the optimal training for our bodies. So at this point, we hit menopause, and I think she said something like we lose like 30% of, muscle, metabolic muscle, all of those sorts of things. So it's bad news unless you address it, is basically what she's saying. Sure. The hormone change is so big. It's like when you come into being a woman, and then you kind of lose that capacity to have children. There's a lot that's changing in the body in order to be able to carry another human. So she was talking about you need to stimulate growth hormone, which really has you in the above 80% of your heart rate. So we tend to steady state. So we get in there, we might be sweating. And I know she not making any friends with Soul Cycle or Orange Theory, but, pure strength training, slower, heavier, smaller sets, so that you're actually building metabolic. It's not going to make you bulky. It's actually going to switch out the composition in your body. So she was big on strength, and then big on getting out of just that middle zone. So maybe be in deregulation where you are doing yoga and mobility and calming the mind and yin yoga, all that stuff, but then pushing it through, not all the time, but pushing it up like to a couple of times a week. into that high intensity zone. And that's the other thing. Everyone said we're doing high intensity. A lot weren't. A lot were just sort of steady stating in early and
zone 2 cardio.
Yeah, unless you were marking it. I've got to keep a watch on because I tend to. I've got quite a low heart rate, so I've really got to push it to get up there. But do that a couple of times to stimulate growth hormone.
Right.
So there's scientific reasons that you're doing all the things, and then there's just moving. I mean, It's interesting. I had this awareness the other day. I thought, because we always think, do all this stuff when you're young.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like you've already got it you're pretty good. You're pretty clean. Like we do a lot of things to become unclean as we get older. But I thought we actually need to be focusing. Goodness, I got to the point of thinking maybe half a day as we get older and maybe step into retirement where we're doing stuff all day.
Right.
We're getting up and going for the morning walk with husband, friend, whoever, whatever. Maybe having a game of pickleball in the afternoon in the sun, doing some training or something like that. So I thought you've actually got to get more active, not more impact, but actually more active.
Yeah.
And you've got to watch your food intake. I watched my parents just went back for my mum's 80th, and I looked at a room of 80-year-olds and I went, dementia, 2 lots with some issues, 1 in a wheelchair, 1, and 8 husbands dead. Like there was the stats like sitting in front of me, and it's like, pick your lane. And yes, there's a bit of choice. I mean, but there's lifestyle, and then there's genetics, and then there's just pure old luck, right? But it was interesting. Like,
it is
fascinating.
Yeah. That's crazy. Now it begs the question, because you and I both agree that group fitness will never be what it was 10 years ago in New York City, right? Like, because I think 10 years ago in New York City, people were solely focused on like, what workout class are you doing tomorrow, right? Like it was everything. And today, people in New York City are more excited to talk about which bathhouse they're going to, right? Like, which are they doing peptides? Are they doing HRT, TRT, like all the things, right? So now it's like all of these health concepts are popping up more so than fitness concepts. There's still fitness concepts, so it's a 2-part question. So 1, do you subscribe to HRT and things of that nature and peptides? And then 2, do you believe that there is a strength group fitness, small group concept that's out there that is a little bit more intelligent in the way that you're training with pushing, pulling, hinging, etc.? Is there something that exists that seems
there is.
really interesting?
Movement's not going away, and we're just seeing, in the same way that we saw the boutiques hit us, sort of early mid 2000s. You're now getting that in the recovery space, right? So, and it's funny. I just pulled my other ship. So
there you go.
Finally got to do other ship yesterday, which
we got to get into that.
We got to get into
Robbie,
that.
the owner,
so great experience. Like, to me, that's the physical representation of my brand. I thought that's what I'm trying to do, is to get people to express themselves, do the contrast, because it's about extending that bandwidth. It's about being who you are, coming back to your core, but also extending, having experiences, doing hard stuff. And I've heard you say that before. And I did feel like I've been in California because it's a bit easy over there. You come here. I had a really rough first day here. A whole bunch of things went wrong. And I went, oh yes, hello New York. I'm like, okay. So you got to do hard stuff, because one thing's for damn sure, you're going to need it. You're going to get kicked down a bunch of times in life from different reasons, and everyone you love is. So you really got to do that. So movement's not going away, it's morphing. Look at the other thing that's happening, high rocks, which is, I would say, even, probably even bigger in Europe, I think, right now, but huge. I mean, this is like a new movement that's getting so much movement, and it's like mutter and, all the things, like people are still grabbing onto that. And what makes me so happy is that there's so many people. I like things that can really get people going. So movement's not going away. We're just seeing a moment where the recovery, I think, because we lost our shit over COVID, we lost the mental health game. So that's come to the fore. Also, you and I, we deal, I mean, you're living in New York, I'm living in LA. This is an affluent set. You've also got to look at middle America. Sure. What is everyone doing? So the trends are being set by us. Is everyone on peptides and HRT and all that? No, because there's still a fiscal part to that. There's still a financial availability, education side to that. Do I subscribe to it all? Yes. Again, it's personal. Yeah. So HRT for some people, if you're trying to, you've got to know what's going on. So what are the testosterone levels in my body? What are the estrogen levels, for example? And are they being, tweaked in the right direction? So I think there's a science around that. Yeah. So I think we're losing this is going to be for everyone. So I think there's that personalization thing. through wearables, through advertising, frankly. I mean, anyone, you and I are not getting the same ads. We're getting served up whatever social media is telling us.
I'm getting a lot of menopause stuff.
Yeah, well, what's going on? Is there something you want to share with us?
Right?
This is a whole other podcast.
Exactly. Story for another time.
Exactly. But look, we're just seeing, and America loves trends. Like, I'm on the Fit Tech Club, which is out of Munich, and we laugh because they're in Munich, and Berlin is a really innovative place. And so Germans will launch 10, well, they won't, they'll be developing 10 products. In America, we'll be developing 10 products. We'll launch 10 of them. One will become a unicorn, 2 will fail, 1 will get bought by something else. That'll happen. They'll launch 1 in Germany. Right. Do you know what I mean? So there's we scale. Good ideas, bad ideas, shit ideas.
Yeah.
So that's what we are. We're the mechanism. People have this belief that you'll come to America, literally land and start printing money. Like, they literally think that. Yeah. And you and I know it's a little...
That would be nice.
It would be nice, but it's a little trickier than that. And it's little... It's not one country... You got to go to
conferences for 5 days in Times Square. You can't...
So, look, movement's not going away. I think it's going to get more personalised. I think the technology is going to assist that, and sometimes there'll be a counter swing. There'll be, let's go for a walk in nature. No one's allowed to bring their phone. That's also peaking. Yeah. People are getting back to retreats, small communities, farmers markets. I'm just delighted to see all that stuff coming back. So it's going to be all of that. But personalisation, definitely. And once we know things, I feel like our brains are all being stretched, but in a good way right now. Yeah. I think, but it has to go through social media. Like, all the science always existed, but it was dead boring, and it wasn't put into bite-sized chunks that I could then go and put into my life tomorrow. Right. Like, I'm on creatine because of a podcast I listen to. I'm now changing my strength protocol because of what I'm learning.
Changing it how?
Heavier, slower, more regular, and also realising that it's not an option. Being who I am at a particular age, I need to now be strength trainer. It's not even an option. So find something that you love. Yeah. And there's a lot of flavors out there. Like, find an influencer you love. Sure. You want it to be science backed. Like, you want to be doing the right stuff. I wouldn't be wasting your time, but then find the packaging that really pulls you in, because it should be magnetic. And yes, of course we should be. I mean, it's just basically the European lifestyle. Have holidays. Yeah. When it's 5 o'clock, it's 5 o'clock. When you turn your phone off, you turn your phone off. It's so obvious, but we're so addicted. Because look at it's the entertainment industry that we're up against. They're so good. Even I binged watched a series while I was here. You get into it and you're like...
I think, though, that it's like, again, being a New Yorker, you're kind of like hardwired for like this hustle mentality where it's just like, it's counterproductive, like I'm exhausted right now, but it's like, it's also the way that the world expects us to parent nowadays. It just, I feel like you have to really be intuitive and in touch with yourself and on the same page with your spouse on, how to really run your life, because otherwise it's there's just overstimulation, and you can overcommit yourself so easily, and for me, if I'm not in my rhythm and I don't have my routine, and if I'm out of sync for a long time, it takes its toll. I know I'm getting run down. I'm getting sick. I'm all the things.
You can't do it. You've got to simplify, and I think as a family, you've got a family, I've got a family. You have to simplify. You've got to come back to principles.
It's not easy to do.
It's not, but we must do it. Yeah. And then you and I were talking the other day, you've got to get really pared down in who you support and how you do that. Right. And just say no to a few things. I think that makes sense. Yeah. It's personalised your life as well, and what's really important to you. And in the end, you don't have your health, you have nothing. Yeah. Absolutely nothing else matters. That's the money, the trips, the people, the things, forget about it.
Yeah. So what are you most excited about? What are you working on that excites you?
I love the events that I'm evangelising right now. So I work with the big events around the world. So that always excites me because I like to lift the game. I'm really on my purpose right now. So I really exist to light fires under people and products and brands that really want to accelerate our industry, because we're doing an okay job. We've got a lot of people to get to, and so I'm the type of person, I don't like having the same conversation twice. I don't like it that people are sort of sitting there going, this whole thing about technology. I'm like, get into it. It's not going away, just like the internet didn't. Like, get into it, work out how it can help you so you can help others. So I'm really excited about some of the brands I'm working with right now. Fast moving, usually have a tech component, really good stuff, like just really trying to change the world in a really good way. So people and projects like that really energize me. A nice amount of travel. I try to do one big event a month.
Yeah.
Any more than that, it just becomes, you know what it's like. It sucks you in. You've got the in and the out, and it's exhausting. Your sleep goes through the floor, and so I just try to do that. And then I'm trying to be more available for my family. Like, you know, Die with Zero has really affected me. Just the thinking, do the right things at the right time in your life, and make sure you're making those opportunities. And what gets in the calendar gets done. So just, I'm enjoying that.
Yeah.
Just unraveling that, and I'm enjoying the wisdom that I have through, you know, 20, 30 years in the industry, and being able to work with people, give them shortcuts based on all the stupid mistakes that I've watched and been a part of in the past. You know, let me help you. You know, like I can save you lots of millions of dollars and lots of stupid, you know, whatever. And by the way, your market's going to tell you, I don't have the answers anymore.
Right.
Like, we are data driven. Like, you got to try shit. Yeah.
So you mentioned how technology is going to obviously change everything in the next, call it 5 years.
Yep.
What do you think the positive changes will be? What do you see coming, you know, based on what you know?
I think we'll see. So first of all, we will be able to personalize, and we're at the front of the wave. There's a lot of people who still don't look at their life like we do on the inside and the outside, but that will be personalized, and then we'll see that by the AI and all the automations that are happening in how products and services find you. So I think service to me right now is again in the gutter. It feels like it was rough coming out of COVID. I feel like some brands have managed to build back, churn's higher, you've got generational change. So some of the young ones, and you know, you've got to understand the new incoming. It's their job to push out the old thinking and bring in new, you know, you can see the young people, they're like, well, you guys did a shit job, we're going to save the world. Can you move over, please? You know, all this corporate bullshit and you know, all that stuff. So I think that's what's driving me right now, is those sorts of themes. Yeah.
Yeah. It's, what would you say is currently maybe something that the U.S. hasn't seen yet that's working well elsewhere? I'm asking for personal reasons. For, you know, just is there? We spoke about obviously contrast. We spoke about EMS. You know, strength training, things of that nature. Are there any other things that different countries are doing or have been doing that you don't really see even in LA, which I would consider significantly ahead of New York in the wellness space?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think wellness, I think just the natural, when you live in LA, like it's just more, hey, and you guys are like, hey, you know, it's just
it's the energy, right? Like I love, the minute I land in California, like it's just, my wife knows, like it's just, for me, it's like therapeutic. It really is.
Yeah, and I guess that's why a lot of people who can afford it and have business interests on both coasts are bi-coastal, because you can get a bit of both.
Yeah.
Look, I would say we are slowly stepping into a more European lifestyle, which I personally think is more healthy. Yeah. Everyone's getting more unhealthy, but the point is they do take holidays. Yeah. They are very good at just everything. There's so much bureaucracy in the US, which is such a waste of time. Everything I try to do here is hard, regardless of what state I'm in. It's ridiculous. There's not an ounce of common sense. Like, and I can say this having lived in many countries around the world. You go to Sweden, how do they do your taxes? You get a text. It's like, you owe this or we owe you. Yeah. Full done. Like, simple example, you know, like, so some of these countries are, I look at the schooling system in Finland, for example, just progressive. Like just, so their kids, you know, the boys, you're never sitting for more than 7 minutes. You're up and you've got standing tables and you've got activities and you're running around the block and you're doing just smart. Yeah. And they intuitive, like the way it's supposed to be. But also fun and just really working with the human. Yeah. So I think we get so tied up in policy and bureaucracy and how can we do it and what does the state do. I just feel like this. I feel bound here. So I think that's something we can learn. So that the lifestyle, I laugh. I worked in Amsterdam for 3 years with Basic Fit. So that's the fastest growing HVLP in Europe. Hilarious. So we go to Hoofddorp. Healthy. Like, everyone brings their lunch. They make their lunch. I'll sit there and watch grown men eat a whole cucumber. Like, just, I can't even tell you. But healthy, like a sandwich and vegetables and like all of these things and sitting down and being social. So I think sometimes we lose all of that. It's so fast and so accessible here that we kind of lose sense. We worry a little bit, you know, we're like, what values are our children getting? A little bit, because you've lived around the world and you want them to take the best, but you also don't want them to take anything for granted, because a shallow life is going to be very unfulfilling, like unless you have deeper roots into who you are, who you're serving, who you're helping. In the end, we're here to help people. If you ain't doing that, if you're separated from that, your life gets unhappy at some point. Totally. Because you're disconnected from your purpose, actually. We're all here to help something.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
I believe. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
I
I
do
think
too.
it's those things, and there'll be little bits and pieces. I think it's lifestyle. I think it's a mental shift. And I think it's taking the best of New York. I love New York 'cause you get shit done. Like,
Yeah.
people don't mince words. And I used to think it was aggressive. It's not aggressive. To me, it's let's go. Let's go.
It's direct.
And then LA, a lot of people hate LA. It's, just because it's like you're driving around a huge big parking lot. But I love the communities there,
Yeah.
which I didn't realise until I lived there.
Right.
There's 100 places I could live in LA.
Yeah.
Beautiful little
It's
little things. So, so I think keep looking. Oh my goodness, Asia, and we don't really tap that much, but they've been coinless card, all of that, WeChat, everything. They've got Facebook plus LinkedIn plus PayPal, all of those things. They've been living like that. I mean, there's certain things you won't perhaps like the way that they live over there because, COVID really showed that. But everything's in there, everything, right down to the review. So that's an easier way of life. You can debate whether or not you like centralized or decentralized, because that's another whole podcast, I'm sure. But there's efficiencies around things like that. And the debate is always going to be around who controls that. But the point is, there's other things that are much easier. They were swiping and entering into facilities and all of that stuff way before we even thought about it.
Yeah.
So there's stuff happening in corners of the earth we don't even know about because we don't really transact with them. They're at a whole different life cycle in terms of the fitness industry. But some of the trends cross. Pilates is huge. It's kind of spreading.
Yeah.
Everyone's like, oh, this new thing. I'm like, new?
Yeah,
Joseph Pilates was a while ago, right?
Exactly. I mean, and that's really, I think, the cornerstones of the fitness is it's been consistent for a very long time.
Yeah.
It just, certain modalities will have their moments. Pilates right now and strength training.
Strength and Pilates.
Those two are just, definitely.
But we're so faddish. We just swing the pendulum, and then it's almost like cardio's bad, and it's like, no, because that's heart health. It's
how could it be bad?
But they sort of, so we keep swinging. I think we need to you've got to have balance somewhat. And I think, if you look at strength, what drove that? And a lot of it was social media. Girls who lift, TikTok,
Totally.
all of that. And also the empowerment. So I think even just female empowerment, right through executive, when you lift, you feel strong, you feel empowered. And I think that's probably what gave me my start, because we started with Body Pump, which was a strength program with a barbell.
Right.
And so when you're under that much, it probably gives you the balls to get out there and do stuff that maybe running the cardio and doing the weights with the walking, which is what most women were doing at that point, and the leg warmers and the grapevines.
Yeah.
Not very empowering, very flowery and fun, but not who am I?
Yeah.
So I look at that. It wasn't recently until I had that awareness. I thought, holy shit, because I was under a barbell for a decade at a key part of my life. I could walk into rooms and not be intimidated by back in the day it was 600 male CEOs in Europe.
Sure.
It wasn't even being sexist, it was the fact.
Yeah.
But there was no way to punch through.
Right.
But I didn't give a shit. I'm used to being in the room and let's go, and I'm a bit of a New Yorker, like straight between the eyes. So
So between the luxury brands, the Equinoxes, the Lifetimes, and then obviously the HVLPs, right? There's definitely, I think, a need for, let's say more of a polished box the size of a Planet Fitness, maybe what Blink was trying to do.
Yes, I think so. Yeah.
Which obviously didn't work. I was involved in Blink from the inception.
Right.
I do. Are there really cool gyms that are like 15, 20,000 square feet in other parts of the world that I'm not aware of? There's some small little chains in the U.S. that I'm familiar with. I have a call with one of them later today. But I just feel like with strength being so popular, there's definitely these big gyms, obviously, but but there's not really a front runner in that category that's not just super discount, whether it's Retro, whether it's Planet. I'm surprised that there's not one that comes to mind for me that's a little bit geared towards somebody like myself who wants to strength train, have access to cardio, but doesn't necessarily want to go to Planet.
Right. Yeah, there is the middle market. I mean, and you keep seeing brands like, 24 keeps, refreshing, and then you've got, LA Fitness, so you do have every country.
LA's bigger though.
Yeah.
They're a bigger box.
It is bigger, yeah. So look, wherever there's a gap in the market, and domestically, I would say that there's brands. So you'll go into Sweden and they've got Sats. You'll go, you've got, all the Homes places. I mean, they're more at the luxury end, but you do have chains, the Virgins. I mean, you do have chains in each country. Sometimes they might be European based or something like that. I think just finding where they are, and then you have a lot of community based. Like during COVID, like of my client base, the ones that were attached to a community, not in a trophy property downtown having to pay stupid rents, but with a very loyal family base, they did the best during that time. As you could imagine, they lost no members. They were the place people went. It became their church.
The members were happy to support, even if they couldn't come.
Happy to support because they knew if they didn't, they would go out of business. That's that was their friend. It wasn't just some stupid...
It's like family. It's an extension of family.
Yeah, so I think that it does exist. But I think when you look at the big broad strokes, who's growing, it's the low cost. It's the low cost and also the luxury who could bankroll it, right? Totally. So anyone who did big innovation and renovation over the COVID, so the Midtowns, Lifetime, they're the ones that come to mind. Third Space in London. Yeah. Big, like just was in Wimbledon a few months ago. Holy shit. Yeah. But see, they're all tripling their wet area now. Right. Very expensive to do, but that's what people want. Go in there and it's looking like the functional training floor. Yeah. People are hanging out under the jets.
Are they throwing in saunas and cold plunges?
Absolutely. Whole thing. Like there was, I think at Wimbledon there's something like 3 saunas. There's the Himalayan salt, there's this, there's that. Then they had like maybe there was 6 or 8 of us in like a cold plunge. Yeah. Then they had all the jets and the pool. And it was, because they were very educated, everyone's wearing a Whoop. We're laughing because it's Whoop in the UK and it's Aura, or it's Aura in both here. Yeah. So it's fascinating, and because they're an educated crowd, obviously very affluent, but they were using it because they're doing the reading that we're doing and they're listening and watching. Huberman, everyone. I mean, he's got a lot to. Crazy. We've got to tap into that. Yeah. Because he's setting things up, but you can see everyone going, oh shit, I can't do more than 2 HIIT classes a week. Now what am I going to do? Because I'm a HIIT studio. Exactly. Like you're seeing people react to that. Yeah. And you're seeing a diversification. You're seeing some brands trying to, you see Barry's, they've got Ride now. Yeah. So you've got a lot of people who they ended up having to do double floor because if I've got knees then I can't run every day or whatever. But now they've got Ride. So you're seeing they're either diversifying within the brand or they're saying, you know what, you also need to do a partnership with the yoga studio across the road so we're beginning to see that. It's
Are there any like multimodality concepts that have the group fitness under one roof that you think
There's a bunch of them. So some of them do. I'm not sure if Drop Fitness is still going here, but they.
Yeah, I know Drop.
Yeah, so I don't know whether they're still going, but they brought a number of things under. Yeah. You got to think from the perspective of the customer. So the customer's used to ClassPass at this point. So they're used to the club in the sky. I do what I want. I can get it at a discount rate, which is fine. You like that for a couple of years, and then you're like, actually, I just really want to double down on the 3 that I really love. Yeah. So there's a little bit of that. Other people are like, no, I'm happy. It's cheaper. I like the variety. So we're sort of in that subscription world now, and it's easy. It's left and right, So we've got to think like entertainment. We've got to think like Netflix because our audience now, the Gen Z and the Alphas and whoever's coming after them, they are not going to have the length of stay necessarily that we did. Like the X's and Boomers, they're like, once you've got them, they'd kind of be there for 20 years. Not sure about these younger folks. Like you do something they don't like, they're out, or there's some other thing in town So it will be a little bit fickle, but I think their purchasing will be different. Yeah. And we're at the beginning of understanding that. So I think, look, there are middle market clubs, there are big clubs, small clubs. How successful they are in a grand, scalable, franchisable, corporate-owned way, that's a little bit up for grabs. And so I think that's all happening right now. But at the moment, it's low-cost, luxury are killing it.
Just curious, before we wrap this up, because we could talk forever.
We could.
Equinox announced a $40,000 a year membership, for all the things. Right. When I read what you get in that membership, it's like kind of unclear what it is exactly. But I think everybody's just now like figuring out that if everybody wants to just, total health, let's focus on total health. I can put a package together and give it to you. I'm not, you have access to, I don't know, oxygen chambers and, all the things, right? I'm curious if somebody who's not as experienced as you, obviously understanding that how important grounding is and morning sunlight and all the things Gary Brecka talks about and, all the people on social talk about, what would you suggest maybe to somebody? How do they start to learn more about, the things that you focus on, since you're so in the know?
Yeah, I usually try to point them to some of the podcasts because I think once you've been educated, you can't unthink that. Yeah. And it shifts your mindset. It always starts with mindset, but that's such a throwaway term. I get educated. It wasn't until I worked out I'd made bad decisions that I changed my sleep. Do you know what I mean? And how quick was the change? That quick.
Right.
So if you hear human and you're suffering, like we're usually in some sort of pain, or there's something that you want to optimize, so I think when you get the education for that, it gives you the validation, and then you find out how to do that in your own way. Because we've been saying it for the longest thing: eat well, move. But it's all just la 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 la. I can't hear you. I'm just tone deaf to all of that stuff. So I think they'll do that, and then I think what we all need as an industry to get better at doing is give the actionable thing, because I think you can vomit over people. This is what I do, and you're like, are you kidding me? I've got 3 kids, I've got to get them to school, I've got this, we've got 2 jobs, one whole job goes to daycare, like whatever. Like that's not the reality. So I think it's going to come down to, if you can do nothing else, get morning sunlight and start with blah blah blah, or work out what you are, so that everything you're doing is leaning in there. Because look at the whole alcohol thing, like that's all sliding. Like no one wants to be in the pub business right now, because the new generation are much more wellness focused, and they're drinking shots and juices and all of that stuff.
That was the biggest change I made, was removing alcohol.
Right.
It changed everything.
Right.
Yeah, so I'm really on that train.
Yeah, and I think that whole generation is, you still see all the frat parties and all that, but it's like, it's definitely
it's a different mentality.
Absolutely.
Yeah, way different. Like we would brag about how blackout drunk we could possibly get. That was like a badge of honor. Right. And I think that's something that's definitely changed fast. I mean, in a handful of years, it became super popular to be sober curious and alcohol free. Right. And, I think we're just scratching the surface with that.
Yeah, I think we are. So I would point to some education, because whatever's happened so far has not worked. So I think there has to be a shift upstairs in order to have a shift downstairs.
Huberman's obvious. Are there any others that you listen to?
I listen to a lot of the fitness, more of the fitness stuff, but I think for general population, I mean, I like those big ones because they're well researched, and the quality of guest. Like I would go straight to the source, go straight to the professors. Like you're basically, and they're putting it in a format that's digestible. It is long form, so you are going to go deep, but they're so smart they can use the small words. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Like they're so smart they can teach it. So, and I think that's the art. So that's pretty much what I do, because I can sit here, we've been trying to change lives our entire life, and everyone that's been changed is now changed. So I think it's the rest. So whatever's working is not working. Whatever I'm doing right now is not working. So I try to point to that, and I find that's the shifts, and then it's a conversation point, because it's all about having a vernacular. Like you and I have to talk about the concepts. You have to know what I'm talking about. I have to do it. And then you can create some change in your life. And then it's self-selected, right? Oh, shit. Because then at least I knowingly know what I'm doing right now is not helping. Yeah. And hey, if you're going on a bend or whatever, I'm no judgment, don't care, but know what you're doing. Right. Have a great time. It's so important to be social and deep in your relationships. Yeah. But you can now not go, I shouldn't be eating that if I want to get that. Yeah.
Well, you're so smart.
You're so smart. This has been amazing.
It's really awesome to speak to somebody who's just, so experienced and passionate about it, right? Like this is an obsession of yours, obviously.
It is, and we're just at the beginning. Yeah. I really believe this is going to be the golden age of just healthy living, you know. I really do, because we've got so much work to do to side up to the medical community. At the moment, we don't talk to each other, Totally. You talk to sales teams trying to bring those worlds together, and it's impossible right now, but it will happen. It'll happen through... Pardon?
Do you have a book?
I do have a book. I actually revoiced... Of
course you have a book.
Of course I have a book. Well, I did it in the boutique sector, actually, building a badass boutique. So I actually revoiced that last year, because there was so much change. Yeah, well, you'll listen to it, because I updated it, and then... So yes, I do have a book.
That's awesome.
And I'm prolific on, podcasts and all that sort of stuff.
Course.
So, and things are changing. Like you write something down, it's out of date.
100%. Where can everybody find you?
So Trouble Global, so on my website, troubleglobal.com, and also on LinkedIn is the best.
Amazing. Yeah. Thank you so much, Emma.
Thank you.
Really appreciate you joining me.
I just wanna have peace. Pay for the bill, let them take my card, never see the receipt. Good health, we prize, but everybody around prosperity. I just wanna have peace.